The demiurge is one of the most fascinating and misunderstood figures in spiritual philosophy. It has been a subject of debate for centuries, from ancient Greek philosophers to modern-day spiritual seekers. Whether you're a student of philosophy, someone exploring the depths of your own consciousness, or simply someone curious about the mysteries of life, understanding the demiurge is a critical piece of the puzzle. It's a concept that has shaped not only philosophical thought, but also the spiritual journeys of many. So in this video, we will dive deep into the full story of the demiurge, what it is, how it influences our perception of reality, and why every spiritualist must understand it. Whether you view it as a force of creation, a false god, or a symbol of the material world, the demiurge holds key insights that can help us navigate the illusions of life and lead us closer to true spiritual awakening. So, if you're ready to explore one of the most important concepts in spiritual history, keep watching as we unravel the truth behind the demiurge. The demiurge is a concept that originates from ancient Greek philosophy, specifically in the writings of Plato, in his work Timaeus, where it is described as a divine craftsman, a being responsible for shaping the physical world. The demiurge, in this sense, is often seen as an intermediary figure, working to impose order on the chaotic, pre-existing material. While Plato's demiurge is not seen as a malevolent force, its role is limited to the physical creation of the universe. It is not the ultimate source of all being, but rather a force that brings structure to the material world, shaping it according to eternal forms or ideals that exist in the realm of the unchanging. The demiurge, in Plato's view, is a necessary and benevolent force, ensuring that the material world is an orderly, harmonious reflection of the divine. However, the concept of the demiurge took a darker turn in the Gnostic traditions, where it was viewed very differently. In Gnostic cosmology, the demiurge is often depicted as a false god, a creator figure who traps souls in the material world, which is considered a prison. According to this view, the demiurge is not benevolent, but rather ignorant or even malicious, a being that keeps humanity trapped in the illusion of the material realm, preventing individuals from reconnecting with the true, transcendent divine source. In Gnostic teachings, the demiurge is often seen as a tyrant, a force that creates a distorted reality to maintain control over the soul's spiritual journey. The name demiurge itself comes from the Greek word demiurgos, which means craftsman or worker. In this sense, the demiurge is a creator of sorts, but unlike the all-knowing, omnipotent God found in many religious traditions, the demiurge is not a being of pure spiritual essence. Rather, it is associated with the material world and its imperfections. The demiurge's role is thus to impose form and function onto the chaos of the cosmos, but it does so within the limitations of the material plane. Despite the darker Gnostic interpretation, the demiurge is not always viewed as evil. Some interpretations present the demiurge as a necessary figure for the existence of the physical universe, and without it, there would be no structure or order to the world as we know it. Ultimately, the demiurge represents the forces that bring the material world into existence, but whether those forces are seen as positive, negative, or neutral depends on the philosophical or spiritual perspective. In both cases, understanding the role of the demiurge helps explain the nature of the material world and its relationship to higher, more spiritual planes of existence. In Gnosticism, the demiurge takes on a much darker and more complex role. It is no longer viewed as a benevolent craftsman, but rather as a false god, a being that traps souls within the material world. For Gnostics, the demiurge is the very embodiment of ignorance, often portrayed as a tyrant who creates a distorted version of reality to keep souls from ascending to the divine realm. The material world, according to Gnosticism, is not a place of beauty and harmony, but a prison for the soul, a realm designed by the demiurge to prevent humans from realizing their true spiritual nature. The demiurge, in this context, is often described as a blind or ignorant god, one that is unaware of the higher, transcendent divine reality. The Gnostic belief is that the true God is beyond the material world, pure and unknowable, while the demiurge is merely a projection of the ignorance that exists within the physical realm. This view of the demiurge is rooted in the idea that the material world is inherently flawed. Gnostics believed that everything in the physical realm is a corrupted reflection of the true spiritual world. The demiurge, therefore, is responsible for creating this flawed world. Its creation is seen as an act of separation. It traps the divine spark within the human soul. The soul, according to Gnostic thought, originally comes from the higher divine realm. But through the influence of the demiurge, it is trapped in the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth within the material world. This cycle, in the Gnostic view, is one of suffering and illusion. Designed to keep the soul distracted from its true divine purpose, one of the most interesting aspects of the Gnostic interpretation of the demiurge is its relationship to the concept of ignorance. Gnostics held that knowledge, or gnosis, was the key to breaking free from the material world. The demiurge's power over the soul is rooted in its ignorance of the true spiritual reality. By gaining gnosis, the soul is able to see through the illusion created by the demiurge. It is through this awakening that the soul can begin to transcend the physical world and reunite with the divine source. This process of awakening is central to Gnostic spirituality, which places a strong emphasis on self-knowledge, inner vision, and mystical experience. In Gnostic texts, the demiurge is often portrayed as a jealous and controlling figure who seeks to keep the soul imprisoned within the material world. In the Apocryphon of John, one of the most important Gnostic scriptures, the demiurge is named Yaldabaoth and is described as a powerful, arrogant being who falsely believes himself to be the only God. He is depicted as creating the material world without understanding the higher spiritual truths in this text. Yaldabaoth's ignorance is his downfall, as he becomes a tyrant who keeps humanity from realizing their true divine nature. Yaldabaoth, according to this Gnostic tradition, creates a distorted world filled with suffering and illusion, and only through spiritual awakening can the soul escape his grip. The Gnostic view of the demiurge also introduces the idea that the material world itself is not to be worshipped or revered, as is the case in many traditional religious teachings. Instead, Gnosticism teaches that the material world is a trap, a distraction from the divine. The body and the physical realm are seen as burdens that must be transcended in order to return to the higher spiritual realms. For Gnostics, the true goal of life is not to live in harmony with the material world, but to escape it, to rise above it through knowledge, wisdom, and spiritual awakening. This view of the demiurge represents a stark contrast to more mainstream religious teachings, which often view the material world as a gift from the divine, something to be cherished and cared for. In summary, the Gnostic interpretation of the demiurge presents a vision of the material world as a false reality, a prison for the soul. Created by an ignorant and often malevolent God, the demiurge's power lies in its ability to keep humanity trapped in this illusion, preventing them from realizing their true spiritual nature. However, through the pursuit of gnosis, the Gnostic believer can transcend the influence of the demiurge, awaken to the divine truth, and ultimately escape the material world to reunite with the divine source. While the demiurge is most closely associated with Gnosticism, the concept has appeared in other philosophical and religious traditions, often taking on different meanings depending on the context. In Neoplatonism, for example, the demiurge is seen in a much more neutral light. It is not considered an evil or malevolent figure. Rather, it is understood as a force that brings order to the chaotic material world. In this tradition, the demiurge is viewed as an intermediary between the ultimate, formless source of all being, known as the One, and the physical universe. The demiurge is tasked with shaping the material realm in a way that reflects the higher abstract forms of existence. According to Neoplatonic thought, the demiurge operates out of a kind of divine reason or nous. and its creation of the material world is an act of divine intellect, trying to impose a harmonious order upon a previously chaotic and informed substance. This view of the demiurge is much more aligned with Plato's original conception in Timaeus, where the demiurge is a craftsman who creates the physical world as a reflection of the perfect, unchanging forms. It is seen as a benevolent force that creates the world in a way that reflects the goodness of the divine. In this interpretation, the demiurge is still a necessary figure for the existence of the material universe, and rather than being a force that traps souls in an illusion. As a Gnostic thought, it is seen as a figure who shapes the world in such a way that it is a reflection of the divine. Though imperfect, the material world is still considered a good creation, one that allows the soul to experience beauty, order, and structure. In other religious traditions, the demiurge concept can be found in various forms. In Christianity, for example, the role of the demiurge is often associated with the figure of God as the creator of the world. In many Christian teachings, God is considered to be the ultimate creator, the one who made the heavens and the earth. However, in certain interpretations, particularly in the early Gnostic Christian texts, the demiurge was seen as a false god, separate from the true, ultimate divine reality. This view was particularly evident in texts like the Gospel of Judas, where the demiurge is presented as a being who tries to control the physical world and prevent souls from reaching the higher, true God. In Hinduism, the concept of a creator god can also resemble the idea of the demiurge. The deity Brahma, for example, is often seen as the creator of the physical universe. However, unlike the Gnostic view, Brahma is not considered a false or ignorant god. Instead, he is part of a vast divine cycle where creation, preservation, and destruction are ongoing processes. Brahma's role is that of a divine architect, but not in the sense of an illusionary or imperfect creator. The concept of Maya in Hinduism, which refers to the illusion of the material world, has some similarities to the Gnostic view of the demiurge, in that it points to the illusory nature of the material realm. However, in Hinduism, the material world is not inherently evil. Rather, it is part of the divine play, or Leela, an aspect of the divine expression. In some interpretations of Kabbalah, a form of Jewish mysticism, there are also parallels to the demiurge. In Kabbalistic thought, there is the concept of the Sephirot, a series of divine emanations through which God creates and sustains the world, while these emanations are part of a divine plan. Some Kabbalists have suggested that one of these emanations, Malkuth, which represents the physical world, can be seen as an imperfect reflection of the divine realm, much like the demiurge. In this sense, the physical world is created by a divine force, but it is still a reflection of something higher and more transcendent. Just as in Neoplatonism, this world is not inherently evil, but rather a necessary part of the divine unfolding. In summary, while the concept of the demiurge is most prominent in Gnostic thought, it has parallels in many other religious and philosophical systems. In Neoplatonism, it is a benevolent craftsman who brings order to the universe. In Christianity, it takes on a more ambiguous role depending on the interpretation, and in Hinduism and Kabbalah, it is reflected in the ideas of divine creation and illusion, though in each case, the demiurge plays a significant role in the creation of the material world. Its interpretation varies greatly, showing just how complex and multifaceted the idea of a creator figure is across different traditions. The demiurge is not just a figure of mythology or philosophy. It represents a profound and unsettling question about the nature of reality itself. When we look at the world around us, we often assume it is real, solid, and trustworthy. But the concept of the demiurge challenges this assumption at the deepest level. It suggests that what we perceive as reality might be a distortion, a trap, or even an illusion, created by a being that is either ignorant or intentionally deceptive. This idea invites us to question everything we experience, to consider that the physical world may not be the ultimate truth, but rather a veil that hides something far greater and more divine beyond our ordinary senses. In Gnostic thought, reality is not the true divine existence. It is a simulation, a false structure built by the demiurge to imprison the soul. According to this view, the physical senses deceive us. They tie us to the material world and prevent us from perceiving the spiritual truth. The demiurge uses the physical world as a means of control, ensuring that souls remain ignorant of their divine origin. This concept leads to a radical view of salvation, where escaping from the illusions of the material world becomes the central goal. To awaken, to see through the lies of the demiurge, one must develop inner knowledge, deep intuition, and spiritual vision. Only by transcending the senses can the soul touch the true reality that exists beyond the material realm. Philosophers and mystics have echoed this idea throughout history. The notion that reality is not what it seems can be found in many traditions. Plato's allegory of the cave, for example, describes people chained inside a cave, mistaking shadows on the wall for real objects. Similarly, the concept of Maya in Hinduism teaches that the physical world is a divine illusion, masking the ultimate spiritual reality. In both cases, reality as perceived by the senses is seen as a deception. One must turn inward, seek higher knowledge, and undergo a spiritual awakening to perceive the truth. The demiurge, as the architect of the false reality, symbolizes the forces that keep humanity bound to ignorance and illusion. Today, the question of reality remains just as important. With the rise of virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and simulations, many thinkers now seriously consider the possibility that our world could itself be a kind of simulation, a controlled environment created by forces we do not fully understand. In this sense, the ancient myth of the demiurge feels more relevant than ever. It serves as a powerful metaphor for the human condition, trapped within systems we did not create, subject to limitations we often cannot even perceive. It challenges us to awaken, to seek the higher truth beyond appearances, and to question not just what we see, but the very nature of seeing itself. In conclusion, the demiurge represents a timeless and provocative question about reality. Whether seen as an evil creator, a blind craftsman, or a necessary intermediary, the demiurge forces us to confront the possibility that what we experience as reality may not be the ultimate truth. By questioning reality, by seeking inner knowledge and spiritual awakening, we take the first steps toward breaking free from the chains of illusion and moving closer to the divine source that lies beyond the material world. Overcoming the influence of the demiurge is one of the central challenges in Gnostic teachings and many spiritual traditions that speak of illusion and awakening. The first and most important step is awareness. One must first recognize that the world we experience with our senses is not the ultimate reality. It is a world shaped by forces that seek to keep us bound to material existence. By cultivating awareness, we begin to see through the surface of things, realizing that the pleasures, pains, successes, and failures of this world are transient and ultimately unsatisfying. True fulfillment comes not from attachment to the material world, but from reconnecting with the divine source beyond it. Knowledge or gnosis is the second key to overcoming the demiurge. This is not ordinary intellectual knowledge, but deep, intuitive understanding. It is a direct experience of the divine truth that lies beyond appearances. This knowledge comes from within, through practices like meditation, contemplation, and deep inner reflection. It is through this inner journey that we can access higher realms of consciousness and perceive the divine light that has been hidden from us. The demiurge may have built the material world, but he cannot extinguish the divine spark that lives within each soul. By turning inward and listening to the silent voice of the Spirit, we can begin to reclaim our true nature. Another important step is detachment. In Gnostic thought and many mystical traditions, the material world is seen as a place of entrapment. The more we cling to it, the more power the demiurge has over us. Detachment does not mean rejecting the world with hatred or despair. It means understanding its true nature and not allowing it to dominate our consciousness. It means enjoying the beauty of life without being enslaved by it. Loving others without losing oneself in the illusions of ego and desire. By practicing detachment, we weaken the chains that bind us to the false reality, allowing our souls to rise toward the true divine realm. Seeking inner transformation is also essential. The influence of the demiurge can only be overcome by changing our way of being. This requires purifying the mind and heart, overcoming selfishness, greed, fear, and pride, and cultivating virtues like love, compassion, humility, and wisdom. Spiritual practices like prayer, mantra, sacred study, and acts of service can all help to transform the inner self. As we align more and more with the higher values of the spirit, the grip of the material world loosens, and the true light within begins to shine more clearly. Finally, perseverance is crucial. Overcoming the demiurge is not an easy task. It is a lifelong journey, filled with challenges, doubts, and temptations. The forces of illusion are strong, and many fall back into forgetfulness and attachment. But every step taken toward inner awakening, no matter how small, brings us closer to liberation. The key is to remain steadfast, to keep seeking the light even when it seems hidden, to trust that the divine source is always present, waiting patiently for us to remember who we truly are. In this journey, each act of awareness, each moment of genuine connection to the divine, is a victory against the influence of the demiurge. In the end, overcoming the demiurge is not about fighting an external enemy. It is about awakening to the divine reality within ourselves. It is about seeing through the illusions of the world and reclaiming the sacred spark that has always been ours. Through awareness, knowledge, detachment, transformation, and perseverance, we can rise above the limitations of the material world and reunite with the true source of all being. The figure of the demiurge has found a powerful place in popular culture and modern spirituality, even if many people do not always recognize it by that name. In movies, books, and television shows, we often see stories about false realities, hidden truths, and powerful forces that control the world from behind the scenes. One of the most famous examples is the movie The Matrix, where humans live in a simulated world created by machines. And awakening from that illusion becomes the central goal. This theme echoes the ancient Gnostic idea that the world we see is not the true world, and that hidden knowledge is needed to escape the prison of illusion. Another place where the demiurge appears is in science fiction and fantasy literature. Many stories present gods or powerful beings who create worlds but are themselves flawed, ignorant, or even malicious. These creators are often depicted as imposing limits on their creations, keeping them from reaching their true potential. These modern myths reflect the ancient concern that the forces shaping our world may not have our best interests at heart. They invite readers and viewers to question authority, to seek truth beyond appearances, and to believe that the ultimate reality is something greater than what we are taught to see in modern spirituality. The idea of the demiurge has also evolved and taken on new forms. Some spiritual teachers speak of breaking free from the matrix of the mind, releasing oneself from the programmed beliefs and fears imposed by society, media, and culture. There is a growing awareness that materialism, consumerism, and superficial success are traps that keep the soul asleep, similar to how the demiurge was said to imprison the spirit in matter. Many spiritual seekers today focus on practices that awaken consciousness, such as mindfulness, meditation, energy healing, and shadow work, all aiming to pierce through the illusions and reconnect with the true divine source. Even in discussions about artificial intelligence and simulated realities, the shadow of the demiurge can be felt. Philosophers and scientists now openly debate whether our universe could be a simulation, created by forces far beyond our understanding. If so, questions arise about the nature of the Creator, the purpose of the creation, and whether we are meant to awaken from it. These modern ideas mirror the ancient questions posed by Gnosticism and other mystical traditions, showing that the story of the Demiurge is not just a relic of the past, but a living myth that continues to speak to the deepest questions of human existence. In this way, the Demiurge remains a powerful symbol, a reminder that the search for truth is never-ending, that appearances can deceive, and that within each of us lies the potential to awaken, to see beyond the illusions, and to reconnect with the divine reality that has been hidden from view. The story of the Demiurge is more than just an ancient myth. It is a profound exploration of the nature of reality, consciousness, and the human soul. It challenges us to look beyond the surface of the world we live in, to question what we have been taught, and to seek a deeper understanding of who we truly are. Whether we view the Demiurge as a literal being, a symbol of material limitation, or a metaphor for ignorance, the message remains the same. The world of appearances is not the ultimate reality, and within each of us lies the divine spark waiting to be awakened. By studying the concept of the Demiurge, we are reminded that spiritual awakening is a journey that requires courage, wisdom, and perseverance. It calls us to turn inward, to seek the truth beyond the illusions, and to live in alignment with the highest aspects of our being. The influence of the Demiurge may be powerful, but it is not absolute. The light of the divine is stronger, and it shines within us even when we have forgotten it. In the end, the story of the Demiurge invites us to remember that we are more than the roles we play, more than the material world we see. We are eternal beings on a journey back to the source, and through awareness, knowledge, and love, we can overcome any obstacle and find our way home.